And T.I. had a lot to say about, this back and forth and the way that Diddy addressed Jermaine Dupri. This is what T.I. had to say about it. T.I. says, I disagree. Side note, why do I feel like NY niggas, most in which I love, look up to, and appreciate and respect, always feel like there's so much above competition with their Atlanta Southern constituents. 50 Cent, he tags 50 Cent, ducking me the same way that you're ducking Jermaine Dupri. You think Puff was ducking Jermaine Dupri?
I mean, nobody spins it like Puff. That's what I'm talking about with the branding and the marketing and like all that. So, I mean, nobody plays the game better, Mike. So, but yeah, I mean, that's essentially what he did. He's like, you don't have enough for me. I'm out.
You know what? I'm gonna go out there and say, yeah, I agree. He's ducking Jermaine Dupri. Jermaine Dupri put the challenge out there. You just said he didn't have enough hits. If it's like that, then go out there and torch him. Because
Mm-hmm.
it's not like you're even in correspondence with Dr. Dre right now. Dr. Dre's not even
Mike,
acknowledging the stuff that you're talking. So go
Mike,
ahead.
Mike, kissing you or who can I run to?
Man, who can I run to is the better record. I like Kissing You a lot.
I love both of
Yeah.
those records, but who can I run to is the superior record.
But Kissing You, that's Raphael Sadiq. Raphael
That's
Sadiq made that.
See, that's what I'm saying. It's very problematic when it comes to Puff and saying this because it's like, well, what records did you make?
That's what I'm saying.
Because Jermaine can literally, like, I can run down, I can probably, Mike, I could sit down before this show and run down 50 Jermaine Dupri produced records. I could.
Jermaine Dupri's in the Songwriting Hall of Fame. Don't sit there and say he doesn't have
Rightfully
enough
so.
hits. You know
Rightfully
what I'm saying?
so.
Like, come on, bro. But anyway,
Rightfully so. ATL, ho. Rightfully
so
so.
what T.I. is saying, and, me being from Atlanta, Georgia myself, I do agree to an extent. And I think we see it on According to Hip Hop a lot when we do these debates. Sometimes when a Southern MC gets compared to an MC on the East Coast, a lot of people seem to waver more towards that East Coast MC, just off the top, right? I think it was one that we saw where it was like French Montana and 2 Chainz, and people were giving French Montana like that nod, like he can't out rap 2 Chainz. And I know we're not talking about top of the top lyricists here, but I do agree with T.I., and I think that the verses aren't the verses kind of like keeping it regional, like they did the Gucci and Jeezy, right? I guess they kind of kept it regional too when it was the Luda and Nelly, but they never have anybody from the South go at somebody from the East Coast. And T.I.'s trying to make that happen, even though he
So,
dug Busta Rhymes. I think that's noteworthy. Go ahead.
so yeah, he did duck Buster.
Hmm.
'Cause Buster's a problem.
Busta is a
Um,
problem.
yeah, because Buster's a problem.
Yeah,
I mean, like Busta's rare, Mike. Like
he is
Busta's
rare.
rare. Yeah, he's rare. Like he's like one of those guys. If you sit all the greatest MCs in a room, it's like he wouldn't be the guy you pick. But it's like that guy could cause the most problem for whoever you might pick, because style alone, he's just unfuckwittable. To quote him. But Ti is saying something. You want to know what I've noticed too, Mike? You want to know what?
What's up?
There's not as many. What I would say, if you want to say East Coast, see that includes like Jersey and Philly and all that too. But if we're just talking New York, like there haven't been a lot of New York artists that have come along that have made the hits to do a verses with some of our Southern contemporaries. 50 was probably New York's last big hit maker as a solo artist, wouldn't you say, Mike?
I would say that. Somebody in the chat said, and I'm gonna get to the chat in a minute because it's going crazy. Somebody
I mean,
said,
I
let's
mean, I
have.
mean, tell me who after 50 was a big hit maker, because I feel like Cam's hits and 50 was all around the same time, right?
I agree. I think at that point, New York,
So
yeah,
then has
yeah.
been big because I mean we talk about Griselda, like Griselda's more quality and more street rhetoric and more Mob Deep. You know what I'm saying? Inspired. If we want to talk hip hop aesthetics, then like the big grandiose hit making Titan New York hip hop sound. And so Tip is saying something because it's like if you look at why it's regional, Mike, it's like, well, really the last 20 years, the heavyweights been coming out of this region. T.I. Ross Wayne.
No, you're
Game
right.
is West Coast, Mike. Nelly's Midwest.
Well, you know what? I'm glad you
Mike,
Luda.
Mike,
I'm glad you
Mike,
mentioned Rick Ross.
Jeezy.
I'm glad you mentioned Rick
But
Ross and
I
Luda,
mean,
right?
what we talking about? Kendrick, that's
No.
West Coast. Schoolboy, that's West Coast.
Listen, I'm glad you mentioned Rick Ross and Luda.
Pusha
Rick,
from VA.
Rick
Clips.
Rick Ross and Luda could go against just about anybody on the East Coast, right? I would have loved to have seen a Busta Rhymes and Luda. That I think that would have been
Mike,
somewhat comparable.
Mike,
But Busta
I
Rhymes
got
is rare,
20,
like you
Mike,
said.
I got 20 Ross records for somebody's favorite New York rapper. And I'm like Tip. I
Yeah,
love those guys, respect those guys, admire those guys, look up to those guys. You know who my favorite rapper is?
yeah. And we're
I'm
gonna
from
talk about
down here,
Nas
Mike.
in a
I'm from
minute.
Charlotte and raised in Atlanta. Nas has been my favorite MC from the first time I heard him.
Yeah.
So I'm not biased at all.
No, I'm a Rakim and Ghostface guy, but at the end of the day, we got
I
to
love
keep
those
it a
guys
buck.
too, Mike.
Yeah.
I mean, Mike, you know what? And you said something strong, Mike. This is one of the strongest behind the scenes comments that you've ever made to me. When you said if Scarface was from Queens, it would be GOAT talk all day, every day.
It would be. And and again, we just got to keep it a buck, man. I mean, obviously, New York is the mecca. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of basketball, right? Like in the NBA, you always hear New York's the mecca, playing in the Garden. Listen, man, the Knicks ain't been good forever. Like, let's just keep it real. And when you
Mike,
talk about talent coming out of New York in the NBA, what NBA talents have really come out of New York in the past 30 years? But they're still hanging on to that. And I don't want to disrespect New York because I'm a huge New York hip hop fan. New York is hip hop
Stephon
is the reason why
Marbury.
I'm even here. But we
Stephon
have to
Marbury.
face reality. You know what I mean?
Stephon Marbury.
That was a long time ago,
It's been
bro.
30 years. Stephon
Long time
Marbury.
ago. Yeah.
Yeah, no, no, but
Ron
Marbury.
Artest, right?
Um,
Lamar Odom.
I thought Odom was from Connecticut. No, he
Is
played
he?
his ball at Rhode Island. That's my
Okay.
bad. No.
And really, I guess we could say Mello, but it's kind of Baltimore.
No. Mellow Baltimore.
Yeah.
You know.
So,
I know.
it is what it is. But I'm just correlating that to the fact that, you're hanging on to that whole Mecca thing, and I get it. Hip hop started in New York, but we're not going to act like everybody else is a visitor. And I
Hey,
think that's the problematic part.
hey, Mike, you want to know what? You're right because I had to dig for Stephon Marbury because I actually went Kenny Anderson in my head first, and I was thinking like, damn, that's my childhood.
Yeah, yeah. Man, everybody in the chat's going crazy. But yeah, people know Face is that nigga. But the bottom line is, if Face was from Queens, it would be a whole different talk. We
Be a
know
whole
that.
nother convo.
And
Be
the
a whole
other
nother
artists,
convo.
I think if Common was from Queens or Brooklyn, he would be in different conversations too. But
Yeah,
it's
you know,
just
because I'm gonna tell you something. When you said that, I thought to myself, the fact that Thought's from Philly helps Thought because it's a town full of MCs and respected MCs, and he's numero uno, and it's clear, and it's an East Coast thing that comes with that kind of too, because it's Philly.
oh, we got Kimbo Walker in the chat. Yeah, Kimbo Walker from New York.
Oh yeah.
Kimba's
Kimba is
nice.
from New York. Okay,
Kimba's nice.
I'm gonna give him Kimba. Kimba's
But come
nice.
on, man. Y'all be acting like LeBron James is from New York or something. They hanging on to that Michael Jordan from Brooklyn, though.
No, I mean, if you want to talk about, I mean, Mike, if we're talking about the biggest superstars of like NBA the last 20 years, Marbury's the only guy that I could say was like first or second team All NBA level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? I would say, man, Kareem is still the giant in New York, man. I mean, we talk about basketball wise. In my
The giant period.
Yeah,
Like
period.
on all levels
On
and in
all
life
levels.
for black people.
Definitely. I love Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, man. But anyway, I do think that Verzuz needs to mix it up in a sense where, because we're about to talk about the Ja
No,
Rule.
Mike, what I'm trying to tell you is that they kind of have been mixing it up. They've been rolling out the people who
regional
have been
mix up. Because let's keep it real. And I know people in the chat will probably say the same thing. Like, nobody really asked for this Fat Joe Ja Rule thing. And they didn't. It wasn't bad. It was cool. But again, it was a forced New York thing. Like, I think that Fat Joe and Rick Ross could have been a better one, right? Or something like that. Like, let's mix it up.
I don't like that for Fat Joe
I don't like that for
necessarily.
Fat Joe either. But I'm just saying, like they're constant collaborators. You know what I mean? They have that DJ Khaled connection, but it feels like Versus is giving New York those New York matchups. Now I love the Locks and Dipset situation, but it feels
Oh,
like last night tried to recreate that. Did you
no,
get
I
that
think,
watching that?
man, Kiss is such a beast for what he did. He just that's what I mean. He's the king of the verses because he's reset their tone a little bit with what they've even tried to do. That's how epic his performance was and what he did. And so yeah, there's definitely some reverb effect from that. And
Mm-hmm.
then I mean he comes out and does New York and the New York Yankees fit with the hat, and it's just like, yeah, it's like, man, he's the champ. The champ of the
Donnell Lee
verses.
brings up the DMX versus Snoop. That wasn't regional.
So,
He's
so
right,
I'm glad you
and
brought that
we
up.
we
So
were
let's
talking about that offline too. And I want to
this
address
is
the other one.
hold
Go
on. So
ahead.
this is what I'm trying to say though. Like it's easier to pull that off because of the magnitude of hits that X and Snoop made collectively. It's easy to bring that together. There aren't enough New York artists who have made those hits at the level that DMX, 50, Cam, Nas, Jay, Mike. We talking about guys we were listening to in high school. I'll be 40 in 3 weeks.
No, that's real, and I think that the connection with Snoop and DMX was the whole dog connection, right? And
But
so,
Mike, oh, it was a clash of the Titans too, because
right,
X is one of the few guys from the East Coast who you could tote out there against Snoop and it not be looked at like, oh no, like Snoop about to crush this guy. It's like, no, that's DMX. X got yak, 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 yak. No, 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 no. That's a fight. Let's go.
I think the thing is though, the East Coast has no problem with West Coast giants, but when it comes to the South, it's like you just can't be compared because
I
to
mean, and
even
Mike, let's
act
just
like you can't be compared to JD, yeah, there has to be some regionalism there. You know what I mean?
right. And style has something to do with this, Mike, too, and so that is part of why it's regional at times
Do
as
you think
well.
not in this argument though?
Like how
Because
about this? Like we brought up Face. Like I want to hear Face versus Ice Cube more than I would want to hear him versus Nas or Jay about stylistically what would go on in the verses, because it's like when Face plays Never Seen a Man Die, it's like what the hell is Jay or Nas going like what? I don't know if it
you're right.
fits totally stylistically, even though I consider Face to be in Nas and Jay's echelon of MC, as in arguably the greatest MC of all time. He's one of those people that deserves to be talked about in that manner. And so does Ice Cube. Maybe not to that quite the same level anymore, but Cube's been viable enough, and the work that he did is still resonated. Like Death Certificate and
I
America's Most and Lethal Injection are still what they are even to this day.
I
So
agree with you, and I think that's what everybody in the chat is speaking to too. When they're talking about, I see a bunch of Ja Rule and Nelly. That should have been it. I mean, because we're talking about styles, and that is one of the reasons why, again, Puffy going at Dr. Dre doesn't even make any sense stylistically. I think that when you talk about the I guess the hip hop mogul titans, maybe that's where Puff's coming from with it. But musically, let's not sit here and act like Jermaine's not on your level because again, we don't even know what Puff made. So obviously, there's something else going on here. So do you think that there are some legitimacies to Ti's claims that New York is very biased, and do you think Versus is going to do anything about that in their next matchup and having somebody from the South go at somebody in the East from the East Coast?
what I'm saying, Mike, if you're saying East Coast, then yes. If you're just saying New York, no, because what I'm trying to tell you is that they really don't have as much to provide currently as you would think. They had
Okay,
DMX, who's already gone.
right,
Kiss is gone twice.
right.
Fab is gone. Okay.
Busta
Like
Rhymes is the only
hold
one
on,
out
Mike,
there,
hold on. Cam and Dipset are gone, and so
right,
let me tell you who you're left with. You're left with Big's catalog.
right.
Like you're not left with Big, you left with Big's catalog, and you left with Nas and Jay.
You left with Nas, J, Busta Rhymes. I would say you're left.
Ray and Ghost gonna win.
Ray and Ghost have already went. Method
Meth.
Man and
That's what I say.
Redman already went.
Redman already went. That's what I'm saying, Mike. They done already like used
50
up like
Cent. You're left with 50 Cent and Busta Rhymes. Is
50
there
and Busta
anybody
because
that
it's
would
almost
miss?
like we almost know that like the Nas and Jay versus is not happening ever for any sort of reason. And so you're right, Mike. Busta and 50 is what they're left with when you look around for New York. But if you want to talk East Coast, it gets a little bit more expansive. But you know,
All right, let's talk about New York for a second, and let's talk about New York in the 2000s, because that's where it seems like there was a bit of a, I guess, hit record decline. Is that fair to say?
see, that's what I mean. When would you say that like 50 and Cam's like hit making ended? Because like I mean, Mike, because I mean, you know, because who really took over around that time was Ye, that Chi-Town.
Yeah, definitely. I would say that the decline. I mean, because we're not even going to mention Cam, right? Because he already went, but maybe he
Right,
didn't
that's what
go.
I'm saying.
Yeah,
Who do they
and let's
have?
keep
So
it
it's
real.
like,
Let's keep it real.
Tip. I mean, I think
Cam
Tip is
doesn't
saying
beat
something.
Ti in a versus.
Huh?
Cam doesn't beat Ti in a versus.
No, not for the whole 20 pack. No,
No, Cam doesn't beat Ti in a versus.
I
And
don't think 50 beats Ti in the verses, and I've said that, and I'm gonna stand on that.
do you think Ti is going to get an actual matchup? Because it sounds like he's refusing a Southern matchup. He wants an East Coast matchup, specifically New York.
Well, Mike, because he's trying to prove a point about who we are down here,
Mm-hmm.
and he knows that. How about this? Tip is ahead, and so he knows his predecessor's catalog and tendencies, and so he like, well, Outkast can't come represent because Dre's not gonna stand up. Face don't have the hits, so it's
Listen,
me and
he's
Wayne and
living up
Ross.
to this King of the South thing, man. He and
No,
somebody in
no,
the chat
but
says,
he's ahead though, Mike, is what I'm saying. So he
"Uh huh."
looks at it logistically like, well, I'm gonna have to say something because you know we still not getting our due, and he has the catalog to say something. So he's saying something, and here's why Busta's a problem for him. It's not like he couldn't. It's just that Busta was like literally around a full decade worth of material before Tip even showed up. And that material's great. That's the problem. That's what makes it unfair. It's literally like he has 10 more years worth of catalog to dig in versus you. That makes it unfair for Tip. Now, if you want to talk about Busta's catalog from the moment Tip arrived till now we have a more viable versus. But if Busta gets to bring ELE and the Coming and the Scenario remix and the Flavor in Your Ear remix to the party, no.
Well, see, this is the thing, and I think we saw this last night in the Fat Joe and Ja Rule verses, which we're about to get to in a second. I think that the people who identify with Ja Rule's hits, they didn't know some of that '90s Fat Joe stuff like that. So saying that to say, a lot of people who might identify with the run that Ti had, some of those records that we love a lot from Busta Rhymes in the mid to early '90s might not work as well. Because we're not talking about the disadvantages that Busta Rhymes would have going against Ti. You know what I'm saying?
No, Mike, I don't agree with that.
Okay.
Woo-ha. Everything remains raw. Flavor in Your Ear remix, Scenario
listen,
remix.
you know how I am. Yeah.
What's it gonna be? Give it to me. Put your hands where my eyes can see. Tear the roof off. No, Mike. Give me some more. No, Mike. No, Mike.
T.I.'s gonna have to answer the call
That
though.
shit staying. That shit staying.
Listen,
I just named 10 Busta records, and all them records is a problem, Mike. All those records.
I understand, and you're right.
Ill Vibe with Q-Tip, It's a Party with Jeanne, Flip Mode Squad meets Def Squad.
I agree with you, and that's just off the top of the head, and that's not even counting any of the features.
Off the top of the head.
Yeah, that's not even counting any of the features.
Just me knowing a little bit. I just know a little bit, Mike. I don't know a lot.
And we talk about performance, and we know Busta Rhymes is
a man. Let's not talk about that. That's what I mean about
he's a monster on the stage.
It's like, no, he's got the catalog. He's got the straight stage presence, persona, flow. And like Tip has a catalog. It's just not fair because it's a 10-year head start.
It is. No, you're 100% right. The thing is, though, T.I.'s in a position now where it's like 50's not going to do this. Busta Rhymes called him out, and like you said, there's really nobody left on the East Coast or New York, because he's calling out New York specifically, right? There's nobody in New York from his era that is even going to do it because Fab already went. I think Fab might have been the perfect matchup maybe in that situation. So he's left with Busta Rhymes. He's going to have to answer the call because you can't say all of this stuff that you're saying, which I do think there's some legitimacy there, and still duck Busta Rhymes. You can't do that. You know what I'm saying?
I kind of get what you're saying. It's just not fair.
It's not fair. I mean, yeah, he's David and Busta's Goliath in this situation.
It's an ATL stand-up type of podcast, Mike. I'm just rolling with Tip on it, and he don't need to do it with Busta because it's not fair, and he shouldn't feel any sort of way about that.
Well, he made it very clear that he's not going to go against somebody in the South. He wants a New Yorker.
I know. I was about to say, like, Game is still out there. I would like a T.I. Game matchup.
I think a T.I. Game matchup would be dope.
I would give Game the edge in that, actually, to not be biased.
Game needs the verses too, man. I mean, I think people sleep on his catalog, definitely. So you don't think that there's going to be anybody lined up in New York for T.I.?
I mean, Mike, didn't we just give like the rundown? Who does New York have big enough for T.I. other than Busta and 50 of who's out there?
50's
like,
not
that's what I
gonna do
mean
it?
about how you really need to look at the conversation the other way around. It's like, it's not who the South has for New York. I mean, it's not who like the South has for the East Coast right now. It's like, who does the East Coast have for the South? We got guys sitting down here that are ready to go.
No, you're right.
Like we got T.I. and Wayne right now, and Ross got another 20. I could give you another 20 Ross songs off the top of my head that he did not do.
No, that's real shit. I mean, let me ask you this. Do you think that 50 ducked T.I.? You think that's legitimate?
Yes.
Yeah. It comes across as that because 50 was down to do the verses against, I think he said Snoop, Luda. But when T.I. jumped out, it was like nothing.
Yeah.
I'm kind of glad
already gone too. Luda and Nelly already did their thing, so Luda's off the table.
You remember before the Gucci and Jeezy, it was supposed to be T.I. and Jeezy, and then they changed it last minute. I'm glad that T.I. didn't do the Jeezy one, man, because T.I.'s catalog is way more vast. I think that T.I. needs to do the Busta Rhymes. He needs to do it. He has to. There's nowhere else to go. We've already covered this. Like, there's nowhere else to go. I don't think there's anybody in the chat who's brought up anybody. I know people are saying Rick Ross and Game. Yes, we want that too.